Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Somewhere between science and superstition.
We have such sights to show you.
Strange Eons. Welcome to Strange Eons Radio. That's Eric Margaret over there.
Hello.
That's Vanessa Williams over there.
Good day.
I'm Kelly Young. Today our topic is black and white movies, which is a pretty broad topic, Eric.
Yeah, I picked this one just because everybody talks about these are the great old movies and everything's great from, I don't know, the 80s or before, depending on wherever you plant your flag. Mm-hmm. And you kind of forget that what you think are the great movies are probably about 10% or less of the films that were actually produced in that time.
Yeah.
But there are also other great movies that have sort of been dusted aside a little bit that are really damn good and are kind of getting forgotten about. So I wanted to kind of go way back, a few years, about a year ago or so. We both really got into Val Lewton.
Right, that amazing podcast.
Yes. And that really sparked my interest in black and white again. And then I got that Universal Pictures Blu-ray deluxe set with like 8 or 9 of the movies gone and remastered and looking amazing.
Yeah, I picked that up too.
How many films does it have in it?
I think it's got 9 in it.
Yeah, there's 9.
Oh my gosh.
It's mostly the big ones.
It's
There's
the big ones.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Universal horror that is probably rightfully lost to the dustbins of history, but some of them are pretty good.
Yeah, in that collection, like the only sequel that they put in there was Bride of Frankenstein, because that's arguably better than Frankenstein.
Yeah.
But there's so many, just in the Frankenstein series, there's like 4 sequels, I think.
Oh, yes.
And then The Invisible Man is a trilogy, and The Creature from Black Lagoon is a trilogy. So none of those extra films got put into that set.
I'm okay with this.
Some of those sequels are fucking amazing.
Really?
Yeah. Some are
I'm
really
surprised.
fun. Some are really bad.
The Creature ones, I thought were all really good.
Yeah. Now, which one has Clint Eastwood in it?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Clint Eastwood has his first film appearance in one of the Creature of the Black Lagoon films.
Oh my God.
He plays the kind of bumbling lab assistant to someone.
Oh, that's amazing.
I gotta see this.
Yeah. Pull it up. Pull up the footage to the internet. Yeah, because
it'll be there.
I feel like some of these properties, even though they're a lot older, like the Universal stuff, are still, because they're so managed by companies that are still, it's like they're either super managed by somebody and it's really hard to either get a hold of, at least you can't stream them, you have to like buy these deluxe box sets, or they've just completely disappeared off the face of the earth and melted away. It's kind of like one or the other.
It was Revenge of the Creature.
Revenge of the Creature.
1955.
Yeah, I was going to try and get like clever with this because a number of movies have been released recently that are black and white.
Sure.
And I watched a couple and I was like, nah, never mind.
Going back in time.
Ouch.
We're also kind of hoping, a few listeners out there, because I know there are a lot of people, and I don't begrudge them this thinking, that just don't want to watch a black and white film for whatever reason. And sure, whatever reason you don't want to watch a film, because there's a lot of damn films to watch. But I hope maybe we'll give you a couple that'll help you reconsider checking out what that is. Because if you've liked what we've recommended before.
Right.
No, absolutely. I know I went through my stint of like loving some early, kind of random early Hollywood stuff.
Yeah.
Like all of Buster Keaton.
Nice.
Every and all that I could find. I had like just mountains of VHS of just Buster Keaton. I was like, I'm so in love with this man. And my best friend's like, oh my God, he's dead. And I'm like, I know, we get one.
So are most people.
Well, okay, I'm eager to see what you guys picked for your picks. But before then, how about we talk about what we've been up to in the last week or so?
Sure. So I decided to give myself a little break. Every once in a while, I give myself a break from watching films and I let myself watch some TV stuff. So I just...
You let yourself.
I
like
know,
the way you put that.
It's kind of, it's sort of like I don't know. It's not that it's a waste of time. It's just that it takes up so much time that I don't often allow myself to do it. So I just plowed through like every season of Atypical, which is a Netflix series.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah, I've seen the trailers for it. Is that good? I mean, you watched every season, so it must be okay.
I actually have really enjoyed it. I think that I can't remember the name of the actor who plays the dad, but he's been in a ton of stuff, and I feel like he's really terrible in it. But everybody else is amazing. Like, it's got Jennifer Jason Leigh. Am I saying that right?
Well, I know who you're talking about, but I don't know if I cannot verify that she is in the show.
Yeah, she's the mom in it, and she's great, like absolutely great. The kids, the actors who are playing the kids are really good. They deal with a lot of topics that other shows don't address in a really, really classy way. So
is it like it's drama or
it's a drama. It's like a family drama, but the son he's like very mild autism, and then the daughter eventually, as you watch the show, may or may not change her sexual orientation. My God. so I don't know. It was good. It was easy watching, and I enjoyed it, and now it's done.
Yeah, Jennifer Jason Leigh you're right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It's interesting. I was like, oh, hey, she came back for Hateful Eight. And then I was like, oh, she sort of disappeared. Nope, she's been doing a bunch of TV.
Nice.
I like how, and this is a plus for a lot of the streaming services, it was 3 seasons, 28 episodes total, where, you know, a normal like broadcast network show is 24 in a season.
Right?
Sometimes.
Oh, no. And it feels really well-rounded. Like, I really felt pretty satisfied by the end of each season. I was just like, oh, wow, they gave me a lot to think about, and there's something coming up that I'm looking forward to. So I really think if they'd added even one extra episode to each season, it would have been bloated as hell. So.
Well, I think the big news this week was Disney Plus launching.
Sure.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And so I subscribed to that, and I was pretty damn impressed with the
Really?
selection that was available on day one. The reason that I purchased it or subscribed was for The Mandalorian.
Sure. Yeah.
And Eric and I talked about this. I didn't love that first episode, although I liked a lot of it. I just thought there was some real filler in it that I wasn't sure why.
I can see that.
Interesting.
But then the second episode just aired this last Friday, and I fucking loved it. And I noticed it was shorter, too. It was not an hour long. So I think if the idea is we're just going to make this episode take as long as it has to take, instead of pushing 15 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever into a segment that needs to round out an hour, then I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, the first episode was 40 some odd minutes, and the next one was under 40 minutes, I think. I mean, it was really short.
Right.
Which I think is great. It's only 8 episodes, I think, for the whole season.
Yes.
I love that, where it's like, this is how much time we need to tell the story and be done.
That's so cool. That's so cool, because then it doesn't allow that horrible, like, formulaic thing you see on most TV with CSI and Grey's Anatomy and whatever, where it's like, by minute 7, this has happened. By minute 15, this has happened. And commercial break. And
exactly.
Commercial break.
The commercial break, that 15-minute commercial break where you have to come up with some kind of zinger or cliffhanger is like, I mean, as a writer, that's fucking hard, man.
Yeah. No, it's awful. It just doesn't allow you to express a story naturally at all. No, that's fascinating. So how was our boy Pedro? How did he do?
Well, he's not allowed to emote a lot.
Oh, sure. Okay.
It's like Judge Dredd.
Because you can't
helmet,
take off his helmet at all. I didn't realize that he wasn't.
Around.
Yeah, he wasn't taking off the helmet.
Oh no!
So that was a little bit of a shock to me.
There is so much joy underneath there. Release the Pedro. Release the Pascal.
I felt like, well, if that's the thing, why not just have him voice the character and get a much cheaper
really
actor or something? Because that's what they did with the Ugnaught character, is Nick Nolte's voice.
I was gonna say, well, Pedro.
It's definitely not Nick Nolte.
No,
because he's like, that tall. It's like little 3 feet.
Considering
4 feet tall.
how much Pedro hated wearing the helmet for Prospect, I'm just laughing at this. Like,
Pedro went.
It's all come around.
Disney dollars. Yes, I will wear this helmet.
Yeah, there's some things that are worth it.
I suppose that's true. If you're gonna be essentially the star of a Star Wars thing, I guess.
Yeah, because he'll get his face out there plenty in ads and appearances and all that stuff. But of course, the internet star of the show,
Baby Yoda,
is just adorable.
Oh my God.
He is
Baby
so
Yoda.
cute. And they were saying, I read an article with not Klaus Kinski. Werner Herzog. And
I could see why you'd say that name, though.
I was like, wait, okay. Yeah, with Herzog, yeah.
A couple of the others, because that's a puppet.
Yeah.
And their reaction when they brought the puppet into the stage at the first time, they're like, oh, he's so glorious. It's so adorable. It's
Oh
like
my god.
the idea of seeing Werner Herzog going, do we have footage of this? Can we get
This is the most important thing that's ever happened to humanity.
on a
Please film
blooper
this
reel
man.
somewhere?
So, of course, also, this brings up all sorts of... I'm going to just Star Wars geek out a little bit right now because I am a Star Wars geek.
Do I
so
need to hide?
Probably.
Should I get
This
a
brings
sheet?
up all kinds of questions because we see Baby Yoda use the Force in this second episode.
Yeah.
We also know that this is not a reincarnation of Yoda because it's about 50 years old. So it could have been, I suppose, taught some Force power tricks, perhaps by Yoda, as an actual infant, because that puts it well before the timeline of when we meet Yoda in Empire. So there's all sorts of things going on here. A lot of people saying, wait, how is he able to use the Force if he's never been trained in the Force? And I'm like, well, we don't know that he's never been trained in the Force.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. So, okay, so it is Yoda.
it is not Yoda. It
It
can't
is
be
not
Yoda.
Oh,
This
okay.
takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Oh,
so Yoda
okay.
has been dead for 5 years.
Got
and this
it.
baby has been alive for 50.
Interesting. How do Yodas make new Yodas? Like, what if a little piece of Yoda fell off somewhere and just grew a new one?
Like he got his tail cut off or
Yeah,
something.
totally.
And
Yeah, and this is the result. Like, this is actually like one of Yoda's ears. Does he have a nick in one of his
now
ears?
I hope so. Now I hope that's exactly what is
Single
happening.
cell reproduction.
Amen. It's all kinds of weird. So
That's true.
it's all fuzzy.
You know,
green.
when they started that Clone Wars cartoon, they started it with a truly abysmal feature film, and it had a baby Hutt in it. That was kind of the thing that they were trying to protect, and I was very scared that that was what was going to happen with this. On the other hand, watching, what's the Mandalorian's name?
I don't remember.
Pedro.
Okay.
They even made
Pedro.
a big deal about it in the last episode when he was meeting with the Jawas.
Right.
I can't remember what it was.
Well,
We'll go
watching
with Carl.
him, watching him walk through the desert with the floating baby
man, that was
buggy reminded me so much of Lone Wolf and Cub, and I was like, oh, if this is the direction they go and they start mounting laser blasters to his carriage, I'm going to be very, very happy.
That is a cool carriage, man.
Yeah.
I like the thing where he's jumping on the Jawa, trying to get in to get his gear back.
Right.
And it's like, looks back at one point, and it's still floating along, following him behind. It's like,
I
okay.
assume he's got it somehow tethered to him somehow because
Yeah,
it
he did
stops
something
when he
on his
stops. Yeah.
wrist at one point. Guess we probably should have prefaced this with spoiler alert or something, because I've seen people losing their
I was
freaking
I was gonna
mind
say maybe you
online.
can write it on the description or something.
I was actually thinking to change the name of our show to Spoiler Alert because that's all we do.
This is literally what we do. We just tell you the beginning, middle, and end of most movies. Enjoy. Star Wars was kind of okay, worth watching, worth checking out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If you like Star Wars at all, definitely watch The Mandalorian. But I was excited by another one I came across on
was
the
that?
Disney Plus channel. What was it? 78, 79 probably? The Black Hole.
Yeah, 79, I believe.
Interesting.
Have you seen this one or
I
even
have
know
not.
what I'm talking?
Is this a movie or a TV series?
It's a movie. It
Okay.
was Disney's early. I don't think it was their first foray, but early into doing PJ films.
Yeah.
Or was I think it was Something Wicked before that.
Something Wicked was after that, I believe. Yeah, in the 80s.
So
What's most notable about this was Disney's last live action miniature effects film.
Oh, really?
And then Tron followed it, which was the first
Oh, God.
of
Full
the
computer.
CGI type effects.
Nice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's the most boring film of all time. I'm sorry.
Wow, you got to watch a few more movies.
Okay, well, I
give you
I
some
fell asleep during it
recommendations.
like a good 5 times before I managed to make it through.
I still love me some Tron, and I still love me some Black Hole, although
Yes.
I can argue that that's a pretty boring movie also.
Oh, sure. It's got if you know nothing about watching a 1970s era sci-fi film, you're going to find this film very bizarre because it still has the look of a 70s sci-fi movie, even though they're trying to play a little bit more off of the Star Wars concept.
Yeah.
They spent a crap ton of money on this thing. It's something like a $13 or $30 million budget. It was
Oh my
insane.
God.
Yeah.
They made it back. I think it was $13 million and they made $32 million. And it's got, it's bad green screen effects because that's the era and stuff. It's really well remastered though.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really neat looking movie in the
Yeah.
way that only a movie with outer space miniatures that are done well can look.
Yeah, very
and
true.
the design of the Cygnus, it's all Gothic towers floating in space, which is really fucking cool. And it's star-studded.
Oh yeah. I didn't write down any of the actors, but it's full of.
Robert Forster is the lead. Anthony. Why can't I remember his name?
Hopkins? Hepburn.
Anthony Hepburn. Yes.
I'm
just gonna give you
From
names.
Psycho.
Anthony Perkins.
Anthony
There we
Perkins.
go.
Thank you. Maximilian Schell. Boy, I am really
Joseph Bottoms.
blowing my brains
Yvette
out here.
Menier,
Cabby from
Ernest Borgnine.
Ernest Borgnine. Thank you.
Yes.
He's in it.
Tom McLaughlin.
I mean, 70s sci-fi, that immediately appeals to me. Like, just
You
from the
might
sounds
like
of
it a lot. I like that the lead bad robot has the same name as the guy
Maximilian.
of the actor that played.
I love that. Oh my God. That's amazing.
But I would say the big weirdness of the movie is the ESPN lady that can talk to a robot with ESP.
I thought you said
heard
ESPN.
I was like,
was like-
ESPN robot.
Well, that comes a few years later.
Yeah, she speaks. I forgot about that part.
That's very bizarre.
I was just like, wait, what does that mean? I'm just imagining, like a very Fifth Element style, like robot advertising ESPN running
It's-
around.
This movie has got a lot going for it. That soundtrack, especially the
Fantastic
opening
music. The
know,
opus beginning they
doom
have. Yeah.
sounding song at
It's
the
a-
beginning is really cool.
Vincent, Roddy McDowell, voicing Vincent, is who she's talking
wow.
about.
That's right.
Vincent's outside doing something on the ship, trying to repair something, and they're like, "Oh, this is coming up. Contact him with your ESPN. Let him know what's going on." I was like, "What did he just say?"
Yeah, and Vincent is definitely a rip off of R2D2. He's
Yes.
an adorable small robot that floats and talks and can do all this stuff. But I mean, I unashamedly love this movie, even though as you're watching it, you can fall asleep very easily.
And I will say, although this is the ending of the film, but is in no way a spoiler because I couldn't tell you what the hell was going on. I'm watching the ending and I'm going, this almost feels like Phantasm. Like, this is so weird.
Yeah, and
Oh my
dark.
God.
It's a really dark ending.
Very, very
Really?
strange.
Man, I love that like Disney went through these weird periods occasionally where
yeah.
they're putting out bizarre.
They were terrible. They had a terrible time in the late 70s through most of the 80s, up until like Little Mermaid came out. They were just done.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They had, all the live action films in the 70s, a lot of them with Kurt Russell in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And those were fun. And then the Herbie movies.
Yeah, that did well.
But
Well,
then,
the first one did well.
Yeah. But then they started just kind of churning out these really basic period piece films with young actors and stuff like that. And so Black Hole was really an attempt to grab some kind of significant box
Yeah,
office.
and it did well, but it did not do that.
Yeah.
And they had Great Mouse Detective, I think, came out in the 80s. Just their animated stuff was.
Yeah.
Not
Although
good.
I'll argue that The Great Mouse Detective is pretty fucking good.
It's fun,
I don't think I've
but
seen
it didn't do well.
Weirdly enough. So does Disney Plus basically have most of the Disney just content in general, or is it like still doing the Disney Vault thing where it's not releasing everything? Or
That is part of it, because there were things that I clicked on that said, due to streaming rights, this will not be added until 2020, but you can still add it to your list. And I was like, hey, this is bullshit. You can't put this movie up on your list of movies.
why don't they just put a coming soon section or something?
or something. But it's,
They still have Netflix and Amazon have the rights to
Right.
some of their
Yeah,
films.
I think because they just got Endgame back, right, from Netflix,
Netflix, yeah.
because they were making a big on Facebook. I saw a big advertisement directed at me about how Endgame was now on Disney Plus.
oh, well, they've got you figured out.
I apparently I'm like, I've already seen this movie twice. I'm good, but thank you.
One time she commented about comic books. She must want to see this.
Oh, Amazon's so much worse. They're like, here are 50 comics you've already read. Thanks, Amazon. Cheers.
Well, I know that you are not interested in having an Echo Dot or anything like that.
No.
But and here's one more reason not to, because as a test, I'm thinking of getting a BMW. And then BMW ads start showing up on my Facebook and shit. So that's
awful.
what's creepy.
So awful. It's just too much. I'm not a super private person when it comes, I don't care how many times I show up on a surveillance, like screen or whatever as I walk down the street. I could care less. I don't have anything to hide from the government. I don't do anything illegal. I'm a very good kid. So I don't really care. But at the same time, at certain points, I'm like, you don't need to know that about me. You just don't.
Yeah, I think that's the argument is, okay, I'm not doing anything illegal, but I still don't think you need to know this about me.
Yeah. It gets to be a point where it's like, you don't need to know like that I stopped eating breakfast cereal and now I'm eating these certain kinds of fruit bars. Like, that's just not for you to have your say in.
I'm curious what kind of fruit bar advertisements I'll get now that you've said that out loud in my house.
That's a good
I would love to know which way they go because like I know which kind I eat and it's my preferred brand.
I'm thinking of getting a Kiss coffin. Let's see how deep we can take this.
What else you guys seen?
Anyone else? I got another one, but I feel like I just did
I
one.
got
Black
another
hole,
On the
so.
other side of it, I actually had seen Are You Afraid of the Dark?
You tell me what you think of that, because I've been hearing some good stuff about this.
Yeah, so Nickelodeon put out kind of it's a mini series. It's not a full season of shows. I think it was a tester to see whether or not people are interested. So it's a 3-part kind of mini series story.
An hour each, right? So basically it told a 3-hour movie.
Yeah, I loved it.
That's what I have heard. I've heard that
I
it's
really
aimed
like
at
it.
kids and it's got some seriously creepy scenes.
It totally is. It totally does that thing that I love children's horror doing, where it is genuinely scary in all sorts of places, but it is not necessarily for adults at all. You know, it's definitely like a teen story with teen concerns, or tween, I guess, early teen. And, you know, it's about feeling insecure and trying to make friends and not feeling like you quite fit in the world, and then stumbling into a group, and will they accept you or will they reject you? And in the meantime, these horrible, scary things are happening because stories that come alive.
Nice.
So yeah, I totally recommend it.
What did you watch this on?
So
regular TV or?
Let's just say you watched it on Nickelodeon.
Yes, I watched it via Nickelodeon when they played it live. Thanks, Nickelodeon. You guys are troopers.
I do love that there are people out there that are making gateway horror.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a parent and you're into horror, you know, you want to bring your kid up with horror, and I am totally fine with that. I do see a lot of parents, I think, doing it the wrong way. I'll get on my grandstand here. You know, I dated someone who was a child therapist, and she pointed out how the fact that I'm terrified of open water, and Jaws is my favorite movie, and she was just like, when did you see Jaws first? I saw it in the theater when I was 6. And she said, well, you didn't need a child therapist to tell you why you're scared of the water. And it was one of those things. It's like, okay, yeah, of course I loved it. And I love it still. And it affected me negatively, though. You don't realize that these kind of things can happen. So I do like that there's some companies out there that are saying, you know, okay, you want your kids to love horror? Let's ease them into it. There's age-appropriate horror.
I definitely agree. As somebody who still is terrified of aliens and alien abductions, like in an unhealthy amount. Like if I'm walking down the street alone at night, I'm like, yeah, there have been stories where they've come in the middle of the city.
If I were an alien, this is about the time I'd grab me.
Yeah, definitely. Like this seems like a good opportunity to snag me right now and then make everyone around forget it.
It's sort of like, but where you chose to live would be like if Kelly said, you know where I need to live? I need to live in a houseboat in the middle of the water.
You're so right. You have put yourself up in Abduction Central.
I know. It does not help. And when I was a kid and grew up in this same place, like I had nightmares all the time about getting abducted.
Wow.
Yeah. So it really messed with me. So a couple years ago, I decided to conquer this fear by walking alone with no flashlight, or like down there's a lake nearby, and just like walking, not running, not walking briskly, or just gently walking my way down there, sitting on the lake by myself for like half an hour and coming back and being like, no, I didn't get abducted. It's okay.
I did pee my pants, but that's on me.
It was terrifying. It was one of the scariest things that I forced myself to do because it was like, this is too much. But yeah, I agree on the larger point that, childhood films can really affect people. And I do get a little concerned when I see parents take their kids to rated R movies. It's like, hey, they're 5. Maybe they don't need to see this yet. But yeah, Are You Afraid of the Dark was a super good, fun little mini series I would definitely recommend. 100%.
Nice.
I do want to make one of our future subgenres kinder trauma. A movie that you saw too young that has stuck with you.
Oh, that would be
definitely
great. Yeah, we should 100% do that.
Eric, you saw something else you liked.
I did. I watched one of our 5-star challenge films.
Ooh.
Pull it up here from. It's listed as, I probably could have looked up to find out who this is, but I like the listing of who left the 5-star review was Beaver Brewing Company.
Ooh.
I'm assuming this is someone out of Oregon.
No, I don't think so, actually. I looked up Beaver Brewing Company, and at first, I thought they were going to be some kind of somewhat local, but and if you're listening to this Beaver Brewing Company, please let us know for sure. It popped up as somewhere, I think, East Coast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, pop up on our.
Do they have beavers in the East Coast?
They grind them down into brew.
Oh, okay.
And
there we go.
Thank you for going that direction because I was trying to figure out a very different answer. I'm going, how could I? No, I'm just going to shut up.
Well, I just figured, when they came and conquered the United States, they killed everything that was alive on the East Coast first. And by the time they got to us, they were sort of done with it.
Wait a second.
Which is why we have deer.
If their tagline isn't "You'll love the taste of our beavers," then they are really missing an opportunity here.
No.
All right, moving right along. So the movie that
Oh, my God.
was recommended was When a Stranger Calls. It's 1979.
Oh, yeah. I've seen this.
This has a very interesting Rotten Tomatoes rating, 60 from critics, 38 from the crowd.
Oh, because they actually
Interesting.
watched the whole thing and were horribly disappointed?
Yes.
That makes sense.
Spoiler alert. The budget was 1.5 million. It did 22 million.
Oh, my gosh.
So it was a huge hit.
That's
a big hit.
insanity.
Directed by Fred Walton, who also directed April Fool's Day and When a Stranger Calls Back.
Okay, April Fool's Day, also amazing.
Yeah, that's a pretty great one.
Written by the director and Steve Fake. Beastmaster TV show and Poltergeist 3.
Yay! Poltergeist 3 is really fun.
Yeah, I kind of like it.
Yeah. Beastmaster TV show.
I know
I've
nothing
never
about
seen
those.
that one.
Yeah.
I assume there's beasts who are also masters.
No.
No.
Oh.
This is based on the Don Coscarelli
Yes.
movies.
I really like the first one of that, but I've not watched much of the rest of the series.
Kodo and Podo, man.
Anyways, but both of the writers worked on the sequel and the remake. So there was a remake done a couple years ago, but I totally missed that one. The film stars, I'm not going to list what they've been in. I'm just going to list the number of credits these frigging actors had.
Ooh.
Carol Kane, 161 credits.
Oh, yeah.
Charles Durning, 214 credits.
Wow.
Ruana Alda with 107 credits. And rounding it off with Carmen Argenzino with 229 credits.
These are what you call working actors.
Yes. They have all done a lot of stuff. And I guarantee you they've all done something you've liked. So I'm going to start this out with that. This honestly is one of the best opening segments in the history of scary films.
So good.
The tension is incredibly well built. The music, the way it cuts from music to total silence when the phone rings is incredibly well done. And the use of silence is very powerful. Carol Kane is amazing. I'm lukewarm with her as a performer, but she is phenomenal in this film. Brings it all together because her portrayal of being afraid but determined to continue to do what she's doing is impressive, and it slowly deteriorates to terror at some point. She's just amazing. It's a hell of a performance. It's fantastic. 21 minutes of movie making.
I was going to say, what was your favorite part? Was it anything past 21 minutes?
Boy, does it become an entirely different movie after those first.
I'm trying to remember what kind of movie it is, but it's different. I know that.
Well, Carol Kane completely disappears
Oh, that's
until
right.
the third act.
And there's like a detective that we're following.
Charles Durning
Yeah.
plays the detective. When that 21 minutes ends, he's at the front door. When she opens the door, he's the one standing there, and then it becomes his story.
Yeah. Which is so lame.
Yes.
And he's like, I remember he hangs out with a lady who's like she's not a prostitute, is she? I can't remember. But he's like trying to save some woman, and she's.
Boy, I don't know if I'd be that generous on the way he treats her.
Yeah, well.
He's basically tried to use her.
Oh, that's
to find the
true.
guy.
As bait.
Yeah, the man, the guy on the phone, gets arrested because he was still in the house and goes to an insane asylum and escapes. And the movie picks up 6 years later.
He was in the house with her.
Yes, he was still in the house when.
That's what everybody remembers. We traced the call.
Yes, exactly.
It's coming from the house.
It's one of those lines that I'll guarantee you 60% of the people that say that have never actually seen this film.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. I think 60% is generous. Say 95%.
The biggest problem I had with the film was it goes then a little bit away from Durning to the killer and works very, very hard to create sympathy for this killer.
Yeah, it does give off kind of a slimy vibe.
Yes. Yeah, very much. Like the guys, that woman you were talking about, the killer's in a bar hitting on her.
Yeah.
And some guy comes to her defense and kicks the crap out of him. And it's done in such a brutal, uncomfortable way that he just comes off as, he's so pathetic. Look at him just getting destroyed by this guy.
Yeah.
This is a guy who, as described in the movie, ripped 2 kids apart with his bare hands. I don't feel bad for him.
Yeah.
And you're never going to make me feel bad for him.
But it is like a totally different film.
Yeah, it really is.
That description of him, though, made me kind of like him a little bit more, so I did feel.
You're like, hey, why aren't you ripping them apart with your hands? Big talk, small walk.
Another thing that's interesting is that tension is built. Kelly's in trouble.
What? Big talk, small walk.
I don't know. It seemed appropriate.
Okay, sorry.
Who knows what it means, but that's
Edit all of that out.
Hell no. So anyways, as well as that tension was built so well in those first 21 minutes, there's a scene after the bar fight where he follows her home, and I think it's supposed to be that kind of tension building again, and it doesn't work. It's not there.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, how'd you do that? And Durning, for some reason, admits to another cop investigating that he's just going to kill the guy when he gets him. He's going, probably not a thing you should tell your detective that you're working on finding this guy and you're definitely going to kill him no matter what. But then the third act kicks in again. Carol Kane gets back in it, and it's pretty good again. The ending is sort of forgotten about, probably just because the beginning is so damn good and it's hard to slog through the middle.
I don't remember the ending of this.
She's older now and has kids, and the guy shows up at her house again, starts calling her. Again, good tension built up in that scene. It's really well done. So the bookends of this film are amazing.
Yeah.
But the middle is, sorry, Beaver Brewing Company, the middle is really weird.
It's so weird. Was there like a different writer? Did they mash 2 films together? Like it felt
I
so
wonder
bizarre.
if the idea was, I've got this amazing story, and then in my head, this amazing story picks up again 10 years later. Mm-hmm. And somebody said, well, we can't just make that. There has to be a middle also.
You need a little longer than a 35-minute movie here.
I was thinking, it's a great short. It's a really, really good short.
Yeah. It's not a bad recommendation. It's not a movie I'd say avoid just because that beginning is so good.
I'd almost say you got to see it just to see that beginning. But also, this is a pop culture thing that you should, if you're going to be throwing out this line, you should at least know where it came from.
I've seen the sequel. I think the sequel is pretty good. When a Stranger Calls Back, it's got a similar but different beginning. But where it works better is after that, you follow the girl who was the babysitter, and Carol Kane is playing a detective.
Oh,
so
that's
they work
interesting.
together.
That's cool.
Because she knows what she's gone through. Oh. And I think it's a pretty solid sequel.
All I remember of it is the VHS cover, which is terrifying.
Yes.
It's got the close-up shot of the girl screaming, and it's a really creepy cover.
Oh,
yeah, it was a made-for-TV that did well enough that it got released afterwards.
Okay, and so then the remake was just a couple years ago, you say?
No. Oh, the remake was, I think, in the early 2000s.
By the time we had Star 69, you could tell who was calling you?
Exactly, yes. I have not seen the remake to see how they deal with that.
Right.
But,
and there's also House of the Devil. Is that correct? That came out not that long ago. And it very much is like a kind of a love letter to When a Stranger Calls. So if you're going to watch that, I would say you should definitely also watch the first 21 minutes of When a Stranger Calls, just to give you even more thrills.
Well, cool, man. How does somebody get on your list of movies to review when they suggest something?
Well, you go to Apple iTunes. Give us Apple iTunes. iTunes.
I don't think iTunes exists
I
anymore.
think it's called Apple Podcasts now.
Yeah.
Apple iMusic. I think is it iMusic?
Leave a 5-star review and then put a movie in there that you want to check out, and we'll talk about it here on the show.
Is this bribery? Just out of curiosity.
Yes.
Is this
Well,
extortion?
no, because we're not
Extorting
asking you
stars?
to leave a false review. You can leave us a 4-star review. You can leave us a 1-star review. Some of those are my favorite. But in order for Eric to review your movie, it's got to be a 5-star
So it's just
review.
a personal thing that Eric is doing on. It's a side hustle.
It's a little bit of a side hustle.
Side hustle.
Not sure what I'm
front
getting out of
hustle.
it, but all right.
He's scamming those guys.
Sure, yeah.
Totally. Well, all right, guys. How about we take a little break? And when we come back, we jump into our subgenre of black and white films.
From the Black Hole Collection, it's Vincent.
Look, a black hole in space.
And Captain Dan Holland. It's the Black Hole action figures, each sold separately. You can pretend the evil Dr. Reinhardt and Maximilian want to force Captain Holland and Vincent into the black hole.
All clear, Captain.
Other Black Hole action figures sold separately. Maximilian, Captain Holland, Vincent, and all Black Hole action figures sold separately by Mego.
And we're back. You know what's fun about this show is that last week's topic was so oddly specific. And this week's topic is the broadest thing in the world. Also, let me just say that I have started, and Eric, you have started with me, this weight loss challenge thing to lose a couple of pounds. And then I started listening to this episode on pizza, and I was just getting angrier and angrier. It's like, fuck, a pizza sounds awesome right now.
Is that why I saw Monty's bag outside your garbage out front there?
That was last week. That was not since the challenge has started.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have no regrets because pizza's amazing, and I'm sorry if it causes you pain, but it shouldn't. If you ate a reasonable amount of pizza, you'd be just fine.
That has always been the challenge for me, is eating a reasonable amount.
That's true. That is true.
Eric, the topic is black and white films, and you chose it. So if you're going to play the game, that means you got to go first.
Sounds good. Now?
Anytime would be fantastic.
It's all you.
Alrighty, so mine went with, I started to look, I was thinking first might be leading towards Val Lewton, because we've talked before, we're big Val Lewton fans here, and there's still a few of his I haven't seen. I was like, no, let's look at some other stuff. Well, Hammer Horror had a series of black and white films in the mid-'60s that I had not seen any of. I'm going, well, I got to check this one out. So I plugged in Nightmare from 1964.
You found me out there, didn't you? That part of it wasn't a dream. Where does the dream finish and reality begin?
Are you dreaming, Janet? Are you sleeping? Or is this a waking nightmare?
What do you mean by locking yourself in all day?
I'll tell you. Here, I'm safe. I don't have to worry about anybody sneaking up behind me with this.
What is it? An evil curse? An insane hoax? A nightmare? Or cold-blooded murder? Nightmare. Shocking, 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 shocking.
Which I watched on YouTube.
I've not seen this one.
It's pretty good. I could find no Rotten Tomatoes ratings at all. It wasn't even listed on their website.
Okay.
It's directed by Freddie Francis, who also directed Invasion of the Triffids and The Evil of Frankenstein.
Okay.
I mean, it's Hammer, so they're a small studio that had a lot of guys do a lot of the same things.
Man, I love those Frankenstein
and
movies.
Dracula's Risen from the Grave was his as well. He's also a DP for, get this list of movies he was a director of photography for: The Straight Story, the David Lynch film, Cape Fear, Dune, and Glory.
Oh my God.
So he was a very successful DP, which probably explains why this movie looks so incredible in certain parts. We got a seagull stalking up us on us here. So if you hear that, just letting y'all know. And
it's staring at us. It's looking at you, Eric, specifically, just so you know.
All right, focus, people.
It was written by Jimmy Sangster, who has 74 writing credits, including The Legacy, The Horror of Frankenstein, which he also directed. And he directed a lot of Hammer, actually. You're saying you like the Frankenstein ones? Or?
Yeah, with Peter Cushing. Those are my favorite of the Hammer films.
Starring Jenny Linden, who's done lots of TV, including The Saint and The Thriller. David Knight, who I don't necessarily recognize the movies, but I like the name, The Devil's Agent and Missiles from Hell. Moria Redmond, who was in the excellent A Shot in the Dark. And lots of TV and a surprising amount of Shakespeare. Tons of Shakespearean.
Oh, I mean, that's never surprising in England. Everyone,
Good point.
Everyone is always doing Shakespeare.
So this movie actually caught me right from the beginning. The opening scene has this wonderfully creepy, long, dark hall with a lady going down into a room with a disturbing lady suddenly screaming at her. I'm like going, oh, all right, holy shit. This is 1964. This is downright creepy. And of course, it's a nightmare. The lead lady has been having them for a while and waking up the other girls in her all-girls school. And because of this, she's removed from the school and sent home. Apparently, the mistress of the school is very impressed with the lady because she escorts her home.
Oh.
All right.
I mean,
you found that very interesting.
I might be reading into this already.
Oh, okay, cool. But as she gets there, she's being treated like mentally unstable. Everybody thinks she's got problems because, well, when she was a kid, she saw her mother die, and a fairly violent death.
Ooh.
Her benefactor named Mr. Baxter, who has been watching over her since their death, isn't there, but he's hired, what we found out later, is a nurse to watch over her. What she found was the reason she has a benefactor and not her father is because her father killed the mother.
Aha.
I love the mental treatment they give her in 1964. You're a highly strung out person and you just need to control your imagination. All right.
Hysterical.
That's exactly.
We got cocaine for that.
And her nightmares are her wandering around the house, running into her mom at various stages. Works fairly well, although, again, 64, occasionally the acting style goes way over the top when she goes into hysterics. Mm-hmm. But her main fear is justifiable, and she's afraid she's going to turn into her mom. And I was like, wow, this is actually, okay, that's actually pretty astute. Benefactor eventually shows up, and she has an oddly uncomfortable attachment to the guy. These scenes in the nightmares and a lot of the scenes outwardly, you can see where this guy became a great DP because they look amazing. The black use of black and white and the creepy shadows is incredibly well done. Especially at 64, you had the option. You know, it could have been color, but they stuck with the black and white, which I think was a good idea. There's a scene in there that I think something was cut because it looks like she has a suicide attempt, and you see her hand, and it's obviously a fake hand, and a razor blade going down or knife of some kind, and then a very odd camera movement that's very out of tone of the rest of the film jerks up from the hand to her face. I'm going,
That seems like a pickup.
What did they alter there? 'Cause that looks like they shot her actually cutting her wrists, but somebody in editing goes, oh, we're zipping up, so you can't see that. And let's see, trying not to give away everything, you know. What's that?
I'm just super engaged. Like, this sounds amazing.
It's a really, really solid
Yeah, I am too. This sounds like something Val Lewton would have produced.
Very much. It's got that kind of strong atmosphere. I think Val Lewton's, especially considering the time Val Lewton was making his movies, had better performances.
Yeah.
He had surprisingly subdued performances
Right.
for the time frame he made his films. She gets put away after her attempted suicide, and then you realize, hold on, something else is going on here. And you don't quite know what it is. Then again, hold on, maybe there's something else that's happening behind the scenes with the benefactor. Is he up to something? It has a solid mystery in it too. And it also has a very odd tonal change in the middle that isn't immediately available. It's not like When a Stranger Calls, where it's like, whoa, we are in a different friggin' movie now. It starts off very much as a horror film and then moves into a murder mystery, kind of a whodunit. And it does it very smoothly. It works just fine, largely because a lot of the huge creepy stuff is nightmares. So when it moves to the real world, that's when it's more of a murder mystery. So slowing after the mid-act 2 turn, the second part of the middle act goes a little bit, but that's all right because by the end of the film, it brings it back around and solves what's going on in a very satisfying way. And I got to say, I really enjoyed the hell out of this film. It's like, okay, thank you, Hammer.
Man, I am intrigued. I've never heard of this, and it sounds really awesome.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, Hammer is so hit and miss that I feel like it's, playing roulette. You just don't know when you pick up a Hammer film if you're in for a good one or if you just wasted a bunch of time.
Usually if you're in the earlier part of Hammer, you're more likely to have a good one. Mm-hmm. Once you get into the 70s.
Oh, man.
Whew.
Oh, man.
You're lucky if you get a good one.
Yeah. I shouldn't be surprised that this was a Hammer film I've never heard of because I just found out 4 months ago that they had a series of noir films. I had no idea about.
Yeah, maybe we read the same article or
Probably,
something.
yeah. So that's next on my list of stuff is Hammer Noir.
Wow, that's interesting. Are you going to be able to pick them up? A lot of that stuff, I feel like it's really hard to get.
Well, I'll be able to pick them up
somewhere.
Somehow. Look, if I can't find something legally,
Dear
I will
Hammer.
find it.
Please send me one of all of your finest pictures. I shall give you $1 per video.
I'll just be getting on the phone. Get me Bob Hammer.
He runs Hammer Films, right?
Tile 01144. That'll get you there.
When you're looking for some of the older stuff, YouTube is a hell of a source. YouTube has a lot of older
that is
films.
true. I feel like people are so bad at taking content off of YouTube, which is great because I really want to see certain things. Until they re-released Better Off Dead, it was the only place I could find that.
So who would like to give their BW next?
I can go next.
Okay.
Like I said, I thought I was going to be clever with this, and I picked out a couple of newer films that have been released in black and white. Have you guys seen A Field in England?
Oh.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
Let's say I haven't seen all of it.
Well, me neither, because I thought, this is going to be my sneaky thing, because Rotten Tomatoes has it in the 80%.
A lot of people love this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Man, I got about 40 minutes into it, and I was like, I feel like I have given this a solid chance to catch my interest. So this is not going to be my film. So I decided then to go back and talk about a film that I just love that I don't think enough people have seen or maybe you're even aware of, and that is The Last Man on Earth.
We switch you to the state capitol, where His Excellency, the Governor, is speaking from the Executive Mansion.
Further, I have, in conjunction with the federal government,
declared this state to be a disaster area.
vampires, alive among the lifeless, that make the night hideous with their inhuman cravings. If they are not destroyed in the flaming pits of hellfire, or staked to the ground in the light of the sun, will the unbelievable become real? A world of inanimate zombies by day, irresistible, horrifying attackers by night.
Get away from her!
From 1964, this is based on Richard Matheson's novel.
64?
Yeah.
Ooh, wild.
It's based on Richard Matheson's novel, I Am Legend, which, as Eric knows, is one of my very, very favorite books.
One of my favorite books.
Yep,
Okay.
mine too. It is fantastic.
This was directed by, now, this is co-directed and co-edited by an Italian company. I'm only going to talk about the American part of this because this is the version that we saw over here. They did an Italian version that was released over there, much like Dracula had its Spanish version and all that, but this had all the same actors and everything in it.
Oh, weird.
So it was directed by Sidney Salco. Now, Sidney has a lot of TV in his resume, including several episodes of Lassie, Mike Hammer, Maverick, The Addams Family. It was written partially by Richard Matheson and William F. Leicester. Now, Matheson was unhappy with the script as it was finished, and so he's credited on it as Logan Swanson.
Oh, weird.
What?
Right?
What does that even mean?
Is that like an Alan Smithy for writers at the
I have
time?
no idea. I actually tried to look it up, and it's just a name he must have thought was
weird.
Either not cool or something. I mean, you don't want to give him too cool a name if you don't like the script, right?
Right. Maybe it was a guy he didn't like.
Now, Leicester, he wrote a bunch of episodes of Gunsmoke, Bonanza, tons of Westerns. It stars Vincent Price, of course, and then everybody else in the cast is Italian actors. So Franca Battoia, Emma Danieli, all these people have hundreds of credits in Italy. The budget, $300,000. The box office, unavailable. I do know that it was not considered a success.
Right.
Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it 72%, the audience gave it 69%. Not too shabby for an old horror film.
Yeah.
Vincent Price plays Dr. Robert Morgan. For some reason, they changed the name. He's Neville in the book, but they changed him to Morgan here. And he's a scientist who is trying to stop this plague that is overcoming the world that is looking suspiciously more and more like vampirism. Nobody wants to say vampires, but that's all of the stuff that's happening. And so he's one of the last scientists who's working on this plan, and his daughter gets sick, and that's kind of a heartbreaking moment, and his wife then gets sick and everything. And so we're seeing him basically, when the movie starts, as the last man on Earth. He's holed up in this house where he's set up a machine that he can carve his own steaks out of big long baseball bats and stuff like that. And we find out that during the day, he just goes systematically through the city blocks and stakes every vampire he can find. And then he kind of crosses off that section as clean. The entire first 40 minutes is just Vincent Price narrating everything, and then outside his window every night a group of vampires stand out there and scream at him and just scream, "Morgan, come out, Morgan. We're waiting for you, Morgan." And he's slowly being driven insane. It's this part is really, really true to the novel. It feels very much like they wanted to get the tone right. There are a couple of parts where it diverts. There is a dog that shows up in the book that's really heartbreaking because the dog doesn't trust him enough to get close to him, and then just as it finally does, it dies. And so that's super heartbreaking in the book. In this, he does get the dog in, and then, of course, it dies.
Alrighty.
Accurate.
Does the dog die?
The dog has to die. Finally, he gets captured by these vampires, and we realize that they have built this entire nighttime society while he has been sleeping. They have their own set of laws now because the world has just completely changed. Everybody's a vampire, and they have changed with it. And they kind of put him on trial and decide that he has to be executed for his crimes against the vampires. This is all very much from the book, and it's the only adaptation that kind of gets it right, because at the end he muses to himself that he has become the new boogeyman in this world of vampires. There's this one thing that comes during the day while they're sleeping, breaks into their homes and kills them all. And he realizes that, oh, I am legend now because I am the thing that they are afraid of. It's the only adaptation that has kind of understood the title of the book. Yeah. And it's a bummer that they didn't bother to use it as the title for this movie.
Yeah, no kidding.
There have been two other adaptations. There was Charlton Heston in The Omega Man in the 70s. Also a fun movie. I like it quite a bit. Very, very different from the book.
Not a good version of the book in any way. But.
And then the only movie that has used the title, Will Smith's, has a wonderful first act, and then it just kind of falls apart, and they completely misunderstood what the title because
no kidding.
They go to make him legend because he has found a cure for vampirism at the end. And I'm like, I felt like that old lady in that commercial. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah, that was so disappointing because it started off really strong.
Super strong, where he's gone nuts and he's got his dog with him already. Oh my God, when he has to kill his dog. Fuck, I'm like weeping in the theater and everything. Oh, yeah, this one, the most faithful to the book. A lot of people I don't think know about this because it's a Vincent Price movie, but it's not like a American Pictures or anything like that.
Not as Edgar or Lovecraft.
No, nothing
stuff.
like that. Richard Matheson, unhappy about most of this thing. He thought that Vincent Price was completely miscast. In his later years, he did have to admit that this is the closest that they're probably going to come to my book. Interestingly enough, this started out as a Hammer film.
Oh, really?
Richard Matheson wrote the script, and then it was going to be produced by Hammer, and then they ran into money problems and everything. But I have just discovered, available on Amazon.com, is the Hammer script that Richard Matheson right
man.
So you can actually download what he wrote. He was upset they took this script once Hammer basically sold it off, and they got another writer to come in and screw around with some things, which makes me wonder if maybe Matheson had changed a bunch of stuff in his script from the book anyway, because this is pretty close. So I'm not sure why he was so angry about it. Charlton Heston, when he was announcing that they were filming The Omega Man, he called this film, Last Man on Earth, and I quote, incredibly botched, totally unfrightening, ill-acted, and sloppily written and photographed.
Damn, son.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a bit much.
I thought so too, especially considering that Omega Man, which I do love, is not scary.
Yeah, it's a mess of a
and
film.
it's kind of silly, But I unabashedly love Charlton Heston and his overacting, so I can watch him chew up scenery all day and just be like, oh my God, what must it have been like to be filming? The director had to be like, cut, I guess. Are you good with that, Charlton? Because that seemed like a bold choice.
You're saying kind of Nicolas Cage,
right?
Sort of time period of his career.
I love that. Charlton Heston, the Nicolas Cage of his time.
So towards the end of his life, Richard Matheson did say that his dream version of this would star Harrison Ford as Neville and be directed by George Miller of Mad Max fame.
Whoa.
And I have to agree with him now. I think that in the 80s, that probably would have been an amazing movie.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Wow.
So that was my choice. I don't think that enough people see it. It is available in a really bargain basement DVD. There's no Blu-ray of it. There's no extras. There's no nothing. I think you can probably actually watch this on Prime now. I know that I didn't pop out my DVD to watch it, so it must have been available on Prime. That's mine.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I chose, we actually already touched on it, but I chose The Bride of Frankenstein. Nice. 1935. The reason why I chose it is because I keep meaning to watch it and haven't managed to, and it's been like 2 years.
This is a first-time watch for you?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Nice. Yes. First time I've ever seen this movie, and I was really, really excited. But before we get to that, so it's directed by James Whale. He's an English director. Everybody probably already knows who he is, but super famous. did Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Old Dark House. It has a very, very sad ending to his story. Committed suicide by drowning himself in the swimming pool after his career kind of took a nosedive. Yeah.
As documented in the amazing film
Gods
Gods
and
and
Monsters. Yeah, which is funny because I have seen that. I saw that long before I'd seen any of his movies.
I'm jealous of you seeing Bride of Frankenstein for the first time.
Yeah,
really?
No kidding.
So he had a so actually it's kind of funny because he had a 5-picture deal with Universal, and they said he could do any film he wanted. And actually that's how he first chose Frankenstein, because he didn't want to do another war picture or a war picture. He was like over it. So that was kind of how he came to choose it. It also stars in it Boris Karloff as the monster. He's been in like a million things, but you will know him as the monster. The Mummy. He's sometimes the Ghoul. He's all kinds of things. He was in Black Cat, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, House of Frankenstein, the 1970s version of Frankenstein, Black Castle, which was actually the film that kind of took down James Whale's career. Yeah. And actually he narrated, this is the one I found the most interesting, The Grinch Stole Christmas. Mm-hmm. Yep. Which I did not know. I was amazed. I was like, oh, I have so much more love for you now. My God. Elsa Chester plays Mary Shelley, as well as the monster's mate. She was much more of a theater, musical, cabaret kind of lady. She did do Jane Eyre after this. She didn't really want to be known specifically as like the bride only, so she kind of went back into the real world. She does a great job though of this dual role, which is pretty much polar opposite from each other. Colin Clive as Frankenstein, who was also Frankenstein in the first one. He sadly died at the age of 37. So he doesn't have a long filmography, just because he didn't make it too much longer after this. He did also, throughout this movie, you'll see that Frankenstein doesn't move around a lot, because apparently he broke his leg and could only be seated throughout most of the picture.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I never really noticed that.
Yeah,
I'll look for that next time.
Yeah, because I did feel like he wasn't super active in it, but it didn't really dawn on me till I read it, and I was like, oh, he was sitting a lot. Yeah, so I feel like I'm definitely coming to this really, really, really late.
Well, let's see, probably 4 or 5 decades before you were born. And
yeah, and I feel like, and everyone's gone back to the Universal movies and gone back through, and the podcast, We Must Remember This, has already touched on this up left, right, and center. Sure. However, this is my experience, so,
That's right.
Critics love it. It's 100% Rotten Tomato. People also mostly love it, 87%. So the movie itself is...
Let's talk about that asshole group of people who watched this movie, felt like they had to put a review up there and said, this is not a good film, somehow.
I can see if maybe you didn't personally work for you in some ways, but to give this below 50% or 60% rating.
To just basically say, fail. This movie sucks.
I mean, there's a lot of people, though, that's why we're doing this podcast, right? There are a lot of people who come to Black and White, and it's so weird to them to see people like acting so big and the makeup so bad and the shots are all stagnant. It can be really, it's a barrier. I can see how, the new age of the internet might have some youngins who can't quite connect.
It's fun. Just as an aside, I've got a friend, Philip Fracassi, who's an amazing writer who wrote a book called Shiloh, and it's a really creepy book about the Battle of Shiloh. And one of the reviews of the book, 1 star, not a good movie. And I'm like, okay, well, that now has skewed the percentages on its rating. It's just like, wow, okay.
That's phenomenal. I love that. Yes, so Bride of Frankenstein, we open on a rainstorm. We have this kind of beautiful, great castle with some people inside, which include Mary Shelley, Mr. Mary Shelley, and...
I like that.
Lord Byron.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Was he alive at the same time as Mary Shelley? Okay, cool. All right. I just wanted to double check. I was like,
it's sort of a recreation of the legend of how the book was written, which is largely true. But
oh, okay.
So
I don't know.
That's
a lot
what
about
that opening scene is.
Okay, I'll have to look into that further. And basically, they're talking to her, and they're like, "My God, this story from a woman's brain. How did you come up with this?" And they're not necessarily talking straight down to her. It's more like amazement rather than like, there's no way a woman could do this. It's more like, oh my God, a woman did do this. So that was kind of neat. Yeah. It's this big, beautiful shot. Everything. I have to say, this is such a beautiful movie. Yeah. Like everything, it just looks stunning. The costumes were just phenomenal. The lighting is great. Just everything is just set up perfectly. Yeah. Way to go, mise en scène. You get it. And they start to talk about the previous movie, and they actually show you a bunch of clips from Frankenstein. And she says, "Well, it hasn't ended there, fellas. Let me take you on a magical journey where we will continue this story." And so we begin.
Well, it was what, 6 years later? I think they did 4 or 6. It was a long time after the first after Frankenstein that they did Bride. It was several years later.
Yeah.
So that's why they did that intro.
Okay, yeah, because the original Frankenstein was in 1931, so it was 4 years later. But I can see why they would want to anyway, because Frankenstein was such a huge hit, and probably just to get those new kids who hadn't seen the first one.
Well, and also remember, the film would stay in the theater for 6 to 8 months and then would not be seen again. Yeah. So 4 years later, if you did not see the film, you had not seen the film.
Oh, that's really fascinating.
No TV, no video. It was just...
That context is really... No, it's really helpful as well, because I was like, oh, this is a bit on the nose. That's fine. So we come to... the opening is kind of amazing. So there's a bunch of people screaming at this like fiery ball of where they had burned Frankenstein, and all these villagers are like, yeah, burn. And this, detective comes through and is like, scatter, you gross people. What's done is done. Have some decency and leave and go to your homes and go to bed. Basically tells them to go to bed.
Now get
out of here. You shoo. Nothing to see here, folks. And one man won't leave, though, and that is the father of the drowned girl from Frankenstein. Him and his wife stay. And he decides that he wants to see evidence that Frankenstein has died. And of course, he kind of ends up falling through. He walks on the debris and he falls through it into this sort of waterfall with like a little pond underneath. Oh, yeah. And lo and behold, Frankenstein has survived, of course, and he's mad. Frankenstein smash. So he sees the father of the girl he drowned and drowns him. I was like, oh... That's brutal.
Sweet irony.
It's not even irony. What is that? What is it? So, and then of course the wife is above waiting for her husband, and she grabs the hand, and up comes Frankenstein. I think he just smacks her really hard. I'm not sure if he straight up murders her. He smacks and or murders pretty much everybody in this film. So, know.
That's why you got to get him a bride.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, he is a monster.
It's true. It's true. In the meantime, we have the wife of Frankenstein coming back, or not wife, because she was supposed to marry him that night. Am I right? Am I crazy? No. Yes. No. Sorry, I'm trying to remember now. Okay, so, because I was confused in the moment as to whose dead body was being hauled in. But so she's been waiting to get married to this guy, and he didn't show up, and some woman comes to give him the bad news that the dude is dead, and they bring in a body, and they lay him down, and she's like, oh my God, he's dead. And then all of a sudden he moves, and they're like, no, he's alive. And then he's like, get me my evening chair. I shall sit upon it. So he then goes and hangs out in his evening chair. And
not that one. That's my daytime chair.
Smoking jacket. Now my pipe. Otherwise, it is not the correct jacket. So, and then a mad scientist shows up who also would like to continue the work of Frankenstein and do more crazy experiments. And he's done his own experiments, such as miniaturizing people. So he shows them little tiny people.
That is such a wild scene.
It is so weird. It is so weird. That feels very Disney to me. Like, that feels old school Disney. They're like, look, this tiny human who's trying to crawl out of this bell jar. Ha, ha, ha. He's trying to get at the lady. Let's push him back in. They shove him back in the bell jar. You naughty king. You can't have the queen. And look at it. Over here, they didn't get along with this guy, so they decided he's the bishop. And I was like, okay. So when you don't like somebody, I guess he's a authoritarian religious figure. Got it. Done. All right. So he asks Frankenstein to help him out. In the meantime, he then goes off and tries to find some dead bodies to perhaps do his own form of resurrection. The monster.
Important distinction when you're talking about the movie.
I know, right?
I think he'd be fine with being called Frankenstein. He's Frankenstein's kid, basically,
Yeah,
right? He's a Frankenstein.
He's a conglomeration of all kinds of things.
Dr. Frankenstein and Carl Frankenstein over here.
His son.
Yes. Carl. We'll call him Carl as well. Everybody's Carl now.
That's right.
So Carl is going across the countryside, killing lots of people. He has a few moments of humanity where, like, there's a shepherdess who sees him and he calls towards her and he wants to kind of engage, but she just starts screaming and freaking out. Oh yeah, she falls off this other water thing that looks oddly like the first water thing, but it's a different water thing, definitely, for sure. Don't worry about it.
Say water thing one more time.
New water feature. And so the monster jumps in and tries to save her, but she's as he's trying to save her, the villagers who are now angry and chasing after him with guns show up and they're like, my God, you're trying to drown another person, which they have a lot of evidence to suggest that might be his MO. So I get it. But of course, like, he runs off and there's a lot of really beautiful imagery that happens as Frankenstein is on his journey. He goes through a graveyard where there's this sort of Christ figure in the background. And then when he is eventually caught, the villagers put him on some planks and tie him up and sort of they raise him up and then so he looks almost like Christ, and then they throw him into the back of a hay truck, which is hilarious. It's just like hay everywhere. And then they go and tie him up. So, there's a lot of kind of, obviously there's a lot of biblical imagery going on in here. He's risen again. He's got that kind of Christ figure thing going on. They chain him up and imprison him. They, are putting him on trial for his deeds of basically existing in defiance of ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So back to the fun part of the story. Frankenstein does not want to make a new creature with the new mad scientist guy. Mad scientist guy is like, I will convince you, I know how. And he actually manages to he runs across, because of course the monster escapes. He runs across the monster, gets the monster to come with him to convince Frankenstein to make a mate. So let's go make a mate. They go find pieces of ladies, put them together.
Make a mate. That sounds like a new product line.
And they kidnap Mrs. Frankenstein, the fiance girl, basically. They might have gotten married. I don't know. Anyway, whoever it is, the chick that hangs out with Frankenstein a bunch. So
Mrs. Frankenstein is good.
Mrs. Frankenstein is held hostage.
Frankenstein.
Franca. She's held hostage until they until he helps mad scientist guy accomplish goals of making Frankenstein a maid. Frankenstein also manages to become very humane. He starts to learn to speak. Apparently, he understands how people talk, and has understood, I don't know for how long, what people are saying. And so he's just trying to find the words to communicate. And in the meantime, everybody's screaming at him and freaking out at him, etc.
Apparently, Boris was very against that.
Yeah,
Karloff really didn't want him to speak.
He hated it. And it is kind of the only thing I don't like about this movie.
He talks an odd amount.
It's too much.
Yeah. He gets more and more verbal to the point where near the end he has quite a nice line, but we'll get to that in a second. So
cool your jets, boys. We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. So essentially, what you need to know is, of course, they create Frankenstein's bride. She awakens and starts screaming and is completely appalled and, freaked out by the idea of Frankenstein. He's disgusting to her and freaky. And so Frankenstein's like, oh no, I shall never be loved. I shall never fit in. Let's blow this joint down to the ground. So, and they have this great ending line. You go live, to Frankenstein and his lady. You, to the mad scientist, stay. We belong dead. Beautiful, really beautiful. I had an interesting time with this movie. I was so excited about it. To a certain extent, it really lived up my expectations and went beyond, which is visually. I think that the sets are incredible. The set they have to awaken the bride is amazing. Like they have like this just huge, tall ceiling where they have this giant machine that's like spherical and it's got angles and it's metallic and it's pointing right down to her. And they like raise her on this bed all the way through the building up to the roof. And it's just magnificent. And the way she looks is stunning. There's a lot of really great moments. Like there's a monk in it that he comes across, and the monk, he being the monster, is very sympathetic. And they have this really beautiful moment where they're like teaching each other. Well, the monk is teaching him about some human things. He doesn't know he's blind, so he doesn't know and see the horrors of the monster. And he's teaching him how to dance and be merry and smoke a pipe. And he's like, I'm so lonely. I've been praying and praying and praying for a friend, and now I have one. And of course, things go wrong. The villagers catch up, and so the house ends up burning to the ground because, that poor monk really deserved that. So there's just a lot of really beautiful little moments throughout, but it was just so over the top. Like, it was just so big. The acting was so big. And I actually think that Frankenstein, the actor who played Frankenstein, was relatively muted compared to everyone else around him, who you have like a maid who's literally running around just shrieking at the top of her lungs consistently. And we follow her for a very long time, a little too long, in my opinion. And I don't think that I'm entirely wrong by the way that the perception of this movie. James Whale actually said that he knew it couldn't top the original, so he decided to make it a hoot. And I think he did. I think he went out of his way to make it larger than life. It did do really, really well for itself. It broke all kinds of records. It cost $397,024. Jeez. And it made $2 million. It's actually not too long. It's 75 minutes. It has kind of a very startling end, I think, which is, it's not a bad ending. It's just very abrupt. Yeah. But I don't know. I just didn't connect to it. It didn't have the same draw to me that Frankenstein had, where I really felt like I was on this journey with this creature. I don't know what I was on a journey with. I felt like I got a lot of really interesting little vignettes. I feel like there was, I just don't know why this movie existed, I guess, other than to like get some off of Frankenstein. That being said, like I said, it's beautiful. And the actress who plays both Mary Shelley and the bride, she kills it. She steals the performance. I thought she was going to be in it a hell of a lot more. And especially since she's such an iconic figure in the horror community. And I was shocked at how short her time was in it. And I know that the actress went through a lot with this particular role. They put her hair into this like mesh wire cage that was apparently incredibly painful to keep it standing up. They taped her eyes open, which was also apparently very, very painful. And then I do love this though, she based her screams off of the swans in Regent's Park. Which I thought was great. And then they recorded that and played it backwards to give her like its own unique sound, that's cool. Which is pretty cool. So there's lots of really cool things about it. It just didn't quite resonate with me, and I'm really sad because I was really, really excited about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe something to revisit then in a couple of years.
Maybe.
When I revisited it, I thought it was much better than I remembered. And I like it more than Frankenstein.
I'll agree with you there. I think that I enjoy it on a rewatch way more than I do Frankenstein, which I feel drags in a few spots. Yeah. Although I love Frankenstein, but Bride is definitely my favorite of that
It's definitely much faster. Like, I mean, the number, I was trying to write down like who he was running into, and I was like, school children. He's running into a troop of like hikers. There's gypsies. Oh my gosh, he runs into so many people so quickly. He has gone quite the murderous rampage,
can't
though.
watch the scene with him and the monk without bursting out laughing because of Young Frankenstein. They do such a brilliant bit on that with Gene Hackman as the blind monk. And it's just hilarious. So
I have not seen it.
So. You need to watch it now because
really
the perfect trilogy is Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Young Frankenstein.
Okay, I'll endeavor to go out and seek it.
You'll get a lot more out of it now that you've seen Bride.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's so good.
It still holds up. That was what I was originally going to choose, was Young Frankenstein. And then I thought, you know what? Everyone has seen this movie. I'm not going to be changing anybody's mind on how great this is.
Yeah.
Monumentally biggest, one of Mel Brooks' biggest films.
And definitely, I would say, like, I would definitely recommend for people to check this out. If nothing else, you know, like, movies, I love how, just like when A Stranger Calls, movies set up this narrative that they continue to touchstone on over and over again. And I think Bride of Frankenstein has a lot of very pivotal moments in there. And it is beautiful. It is stunning. Like in the beginning, Mary Shelley's in this like dress, and I swear it takes up half the freaking room. Like it has this long flowing veil across the entire floor. I'm like, that girl's not standing up in this movie. No, sir. But so I would recommend it, even though I didn't personally feel like I connected. But yeah, it is definitely objectively a good film.
It is interesting, you know, we were talking about seeing movies too young and how they shape us and everything, because I saw that when I was, I don't know, 9 or 10, and Elsa Lancaster was just gorgeous to me, and that has been what I gravitate towards in my life, is big eyes and dark hair and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
I see that.
It is funny how that happens, for sure.
Yep, definitely.
So, yeah. All right, well, excellent choices, guys. I guess that's our episode. That means I get to choose next. Right. We're in the middle of November, and I see that other places are talking about Noirvember, and you know, right on the heels of this black and white episode. So I think that's what I want to do is noir films for our next choice.
Keep it wide.
Yeah. So that's your guys' homework for next week. Let us know what you guys are thinking. Thank you so much for all of the liking, sharing, telling your friends. We have zero budget for advertising, so you know, we're watching the numbers go up and up. That's because you guys are talking about us. Right. Thanks for sharing, Danny and Ron and Bob and everybody who's always out there saying nice things about us. Keep up the 5-star reviews. I love watching Eric review these movies. Although, you know what? You've been a little light on him. These are kind of good movies. I didn't think that was the point.
I mean, you know, Extra was pretty good. Strip Nude for Your Killer was an interesting viewing experience.
Thanks, Tony.
And When a Stranger Calls Back was 30 minutes of really good film.
Yeah.
Crammed into almost 2 hours.
All right, guys. Well, I will see the two of you next week, and then we will see all the listeners a couple days after that.
Wait, what?
Yeah. That's right. I said it. That means that we record this, and then a couple days later it comes out and they hear it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry, I thought you meant like we were going to a convention.
Yes, we're doing
like,
a live
where
event.
Are we going?
Oh, we didn't tell you?
Again, oddly. Funny how that happens.
We're going to Montreal.
Montreal. Wait, what?
Yeah, that didn't make sense.
We're not.
I like poutine.
Can we end this episode, you guys?
Okay.
All right, bye.
Our show is recorded somewhere high above Naval Station Everett at the nexus of all realities and is engineered and produced by Eric Morgret. Our theme music is Strange Aeons Part 1 by the band Nightshade and is used with permission. Find Strange Aeons Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and wherever fine podcasts are found.